Welcome to Transqat. I'm Claire McCarthy. One of my goals in starting this podcast was that it might serve over time as an archive of people's experiences, a core of stories, if I can say that without NPR suing me. Transgender is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It intersects with age and race and geography, education, healthcare, the legal system. Everybody has a different story, and every story deserves to be heard. Lucas Newman is a trans man currently living in Houston, Texas, and in the course of our conversation, we touch on some of these themes of intersectionality. I learned a lot. I hope you enjoy the chat. So, Lucas, I don't know if you can hear in the background, but in we're the early November here in the Northeast, and in early November, we all judge our sense of self-worth by how well we move leaves from one side of the yard to the other side of the yard. It's a pride thing. It's you're competing with your neighbors. So right now, my neighborhood is just a symphony of leaf blowers, and they somehow sensed that I was going to be recording with you.
Yeah,
Newman,
you're all good.
Oh, excellent. Lucas Newman, welcome to Transqat. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
We were going to talk last week, but you decided, and I think quite wisely, to celebrate your wife's birthday instead.
Yes.
Good decision.
Yes.
Very, very smart decision. Now we are both smart enough that we are not going to mention your wife's age. But
even though she is very proud of her age.
Let's start with the love story. Tell me about how you and your wife met. How long have you been together?
We've been together for almost 8 years, just about. But we've been married for 2. Yeah, so our wedding anniversary just passed October 10th.
Oh, congratulations.
So that made our 2 years. And we actually met through a mutual friend who is also trans as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So when you met, where were you in your transition?
I had just started.
So she understood where you were in that journey?
Yes. So she actually met me, I think, when I was 2 months on testosterone. So yeah, I was fresh in my transition.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was just kind of figuring myself out. So, but she was great. She fully accepted me for who I am, never saw me less than what I saw myself. So, I think that's really where the magic started.
Yeah, right up front, where you kind of know going in, this is somebody who has my back. This is somebody who is willing to listen as I'm working through this process.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And also too, that was very much so ready to learn and engulf themselves in what I was about to go through with transitioning. So yeah, that was nice. Especially when because with transitioning, it was very scary for me when I first started because I didn't know how everyone would respond. So I felt like everybody was kind of distancing themselves from me. And until I guess I figured everything out, but they kind of distanced themselves from me. So it was very nice to have that support there in a very scary time.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So
I want to ask you about being on T, but let me go back to what you just said a little bit. When you say people kind of distance themselves, are we talking about coworkers, family, friends?
Family. It was really more of my mother had a very hard time with it. I think it was just it was a lot for her.
Sure.
Because she was just getting used to my daughter's lesbian. So she was just getting used to that. And then it was just like me coming back and being like, no, this is really what's going on. I've just been scared to just say that and be who I feel I am. So it took her a while to really process that. And I gave her that time to process that. And and I'm glad that she did too as well.
So has she come around? Has she come to a
Oh
better
yes, oh
understanding?
yes. She absolutely loves my wife.
Oh,
Uh,
excellent.
so they are best friends. But it took a while to get there though.
Yeah. Now, did you kind of leave her be and let her work it through, or were you helping her through, helping educate her about what this whole trans thing is?
It was more of letting her be for a
Hmm.
while. I stepped back and kind of let her be. And frankly, I believe she figured it out for herself. um, she ended up like having a lot of my sister's friends who are around her that are a part of the community, seeing different shows. There's that one show, I think it's called Council of Fathers.
Okay.
They have a trans child on there, and just seeing the reaction and just how that kid was treated by some of the family members. I think because she mentioned for me to watch it.
Oh,
So then
great.
I decided to watch it.
But that's
And then
that's cool. That's what's so cool about there being those resources on TV. You can leave someone to their own devices and say, "Why don't you watch this?" And then we can have a conversation about it.
sensation. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So it doesn't. It's not sort of coming out of left field, and I don't know what this means. It's like, oh, okay. Well, how are you like this person, and how are you different from this person that I just saw on TV?
Right. So it was like that. And I just she the more that she got educated on it, I believe that the more that she really kind of just opened up. And like now, like I said, our relationship is great.
Oh, I'm so
It
glad
was
to
like I
hear
said, it
that.
was rocky and scary at first, but now we're good. And of course, a lovely lady has a lot to do with that as well that we will talk about later. My like proudest moment was the very first time she ever called me and actually said my son, and actually said yeah.
Oh,
And I hold on that like I
yeah.
almost I almost started crying to the point that I couldn't even like speak to her.
Oh, yeah. I hear you. It's
So yeah,
it's such to people on the outside of this, that is such a small thing, but to
yeah,
you and me and folks like us, it just, it cuts right to the heart. And
yes, it does.
it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Right. Like you said, like it was hard. It took a long time, and she still has her slip ups every now and then, but for the most part, she's trying, and she definitely, like I said, she loves who I've become, and she loves like how I take care of my family, and yeah, so
Yeah, right.
it's been great that she realized that she didn't lose a kid, because that's the biggest thing is that everyone always feels like they have to mourn a loss,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, like I'm still here, I'm still incredible.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And wouldn't you rather have me happier and healthier and living a more full life rather than stick with what you knew, but I'm miserable? Tell,
Yes.
tell me about this. This is the wrong way to ask it. So I'm sorry, my friend, but
Oh, that's it.
tell me about the miserable. When did you decide you wanted to transition? When did you start suspecting that you were trans? What was it like before you came out? That's a lot of
It's
questions.
very interesting because I felt like I pretty much have known my entire life. I knew even as a child, but it was just one of those things of there wasn't enough representation,
Hmm.
I feel. So I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know what that meant for me growing up,
Right.
until I finally got into college. Started getting a little bit more educated on the LGBT community, and it finally popped out to me, like, and that it's possible that you can do this and you can feel happy. But the miserable part for me was just it kind of happened and settled in for me roughly around 25 years old. And it was just I was coming to a point in my life where the things that was doing wasn't equaling up to who I wanted to be. And I started getting very depressed. And I even got to a point where, like, I felt like life just wasn't worth living anymore. So a friend, matter of fact, the friend who introduced me to my wife,
Ah,
and he is so wonderful. And I ended up by just talking with him, and we had these very deep conversations, just about how we felt. And he was just like, "Hey, let's go to this Pride." So we went to this Pride in Nashville, and they have all these like booths and like, yeah, places set up for you to go and get information and
yeah.
have a good time. And I met my therapist,
At the
and
Pride.
yes, and I was in such a dark place, like I said, because
Yeah.
it was just thinking about like taking my own life and things like that. So which can get very dark. And so I scheduled this appointment, met this lady, scheduled this appointment, went to my very first appointment, and it was just like, aha, like this is what I need to do. And then she actually helped me take the steps and what I needed to go next for transition.
So this was
So
this was a professional who had at least some sense of what transgender mental health care is, and knew where to point
exactly,
you.
exactly, yes. They're actually, that's their whole setup was for that. Their
Yeah.
whole setup was, to help trans people or people in the LGBTQ plus community. So it was very comforting to know that I was going in with someone who understood exactly where I was at.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask about, because I am learning that this is pretty common for trans men, is that you have to come out twice. Whereas
Yes.
that's really not the case for us trans women for the most part. And it's something that I mean, I think I first read about in Chaz Bono's book. You get some feedback the second time that it's like, well, make up your mind.
Yeah.
Uh, so tell me about that. So at some point you came out as lesbian, and how did that
Yes.
go?
It's a very funny story now. It wasn't then. I remember I was in college when I actually came out as lesbian. It was my freshman year of college, matter of fact. And I remember calling home. I What drove me to actually come out to my parents was I had a friend that I actually went to college with, who played basketball, and she was amazing, love her to death. And she actually got outed
Mm,
by her boyfriend, because she was, yeah, it was just a bad relationship, bad
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
And he outed her because she was drifting away from him and didn't want to be with him anymore, and he found out the reason why. And they both lived in my hometown, and because of that he was getting to where he was kind of eyeing me, uh,
Oh wow.
and even though I had nothing to do with the situation at all. And he was one of my best friends. Like, I actually grew up playing football with this guy. And he was just like, it wasn't that he was mad at me. It was just the, why didn't you tell me and you knew?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's just like, it wasn't my place, so because I wasn't a part of the relationship. I went ahead and was just like, let me go ahead and talk to my parents before this gets any worse. Because her response to her coming out was very horrible.
Mm.
We had to deal with parents coming to the school, and it wasn't a good situation.
And
Um,
where was this, Lucas? This was in Tennessee, or
yes, this was in Tennessee. I was actually out in Jackson, Tennessee, at
okay?
Lamont University. That's where when I was in freshman in college, that's where I first went. I did eventually end up at Fisk University,
Ah,
but that's another story.
okay. All
but,
right.
but yeah, so but I decided to come out to my parents. I get home that night. I call my mom, and I'm telling my mom, I'm just like, "Hey, mom, there's something I need to tell you." And she was like, "Go ahead, sweetheart. Like, what's going on?" And I was just like, "Well, I'm a lesbian." And she's just like, "Okay, well, here's your father." She
I'm
just
handing off
gives
the
him a
phone.
phone.
Oh,
Yes, and my dad, like I said, it's funny now, but at the time it was just like, it was so heartbreaking at the time.
yeah.
But it's funny now. But my dad gets the phone. He's just like, "Hey, I always know. Like, I've known since you were young." He was like, "The
Really?
first time I ever threw a baseball in the sky, and you ran up under it, and you caught it, and then looked at me and was just like, I don't want to play with the girls anymore." He was like, "I knew then."
Ah.
So he's like, I'm just happy that you're actually like letting us know who you are, you know. So and I thought that was gonna be it. But the very next day, my mom calls and she's just like, no, we need to talk about this.
Okay. All right.
So I need you to come home and like, yeah, we gotta talk. We need to sit down and talk about this. So I actually ended up going home, and it was Valentine's Day. I'll never forget because it was like I went home in the middle of a winter storm. And by golly, by the time I got there and had the conversation with my mom, it felt like a winter storm. Yeah, I was like, she was not happy at all.
Oh.
It just went against everything that, her religion
Mm-hmm.
and things stood for. So she didn't know what to do with that information. It took her a little minute. My dad was immediately on board, though. He's always been on
Oh,
board,
that's wonderful.
but he does his best to still try to, comfort my mother
Yeah,
as she's, dealing with it too.
sure.
But yeah, so I was at least happy to have that support from my father. But it took, like I said, my mom had to warm up to it. She was not with it at first.
Wow.
And I was like, even because like my dad, I feel like he knew as well that I was going to come out as trans. But he didn't really say anything until I was ready. Because he was kind of just like a lesbian. That's it. You sure? Like when I
Really?
first came
Oh,
out, yeah.
wow.
So I feel like he kind of knew, but he was just like very much so letting me come to that conclusion on my own.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. The religion aspect is difficult. It's an impediment for a lot of folks. In terms of family, but also in terms of their own relationship with their faith. How attached were you to your church? What denomination are we
yeah,
talking about?
Baptist. I'm
Okay. Oh,
Baptist.
okay. So
Yeah, I'm a
hardcore,
Christian. Yeah,
not big
but
LGBTQ
and
friendly.
I still very much so am. I still very much so have ties to my religion. It took a wonderful friend by the name of Amaria that I had spoken to when I was in college at Fisk University. So we're jumping to Fisk now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was struggling with that actually right before my transition was with my religion. Um, and she was just like, hey, before being so hard on yourself, she was like, you really need to sit down and do your own research. You really need to sit down and digest and pull things apart for yourself before you decide to just completely, sever your relationship with, your religion. And so I took her advice. So I decided to sit down and do that research. There is a wonderful, beautiful documentary called Fish Out of Water, but it's done by a lady who went to Vanderbilt. And it is a beautiful documentary, especially someone who is Baptist or Christian and deals with those verses and things that come out the Bible, because they break those verses down academically. Because a lot of people don't know like how many hands the Bible has actually passed through.
Right.
So
Right.
there's so many like edits
Yeah.
to things, and no one knows what the true meaning of it was supposed to be.
Right.
The initial intent was what it was for. Yeah.
So you started looking at
So
that sort of stuff to.
yes, and picking it apart. Yeah. So I and with that, I honestly I feel like I saved my relationship, with my God, and yeah. So I still very much have my ties. I still very much will go to church, will worship, and I will be in my own spiritual space, with my God. So I still have that.
Good for you. Oh, congratulations. That's so good
Yeah,
to
but
hear.
if anyone though, like I said, if anyone is struggling with that, a beautiful documentary, Fish Out of Water.
Do you know where it's streaming?
I'm not sure right now. I
Okay.
actually had the DVD. I got the pleasure of someone actually getting me a DVD because I know that you can purchase it on Amazon. I know that for sure.
So you're at Fisk now. You are you're looking at evaluating your faith relationship. So how far is it between there and your decision to come out as trans?
So once I get to Fisk, which was around my sophomore year, I went all the way through college as lesbian.
Mhm.
So identified as a lesbian all the way through college. I get around my senior year, really, uh, it was just about maybe 2 years after my senior year. That's really when it hit, like, all right, like I got to do something. Like it was between the finding a job, because I had got my psychology degree, and I have to do something. I don't feel good about myself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like I'm who I'm supposed to be right now.
Yeah.
So that's when it hit. And I was actually in a relationship at the time with someone else. And that person too really made me sit down and kind of look at myself, and as far as how I felt, and where I wanted to be. So because they could obviously tell I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and so I took that time. And like I said, I had my buddy Gabe around me. He was amazing, and we started hanging out, and I started going to these pride events, and I started really just, you know, and then I finally woke up one morning and it was just like, this is who I am, and this is who I'm going to be, and this is who I'm working towards. And I started my transition, and when I did, it was probably the happiest time ever in my life. I honestly, it's I have a wonderful cousin by the name of Zena who can attest to this, but because I was actually living with her at the time, because I was afraid to go back home, because my mom was very much so in the, if you live under my house, it's my rules,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
And so, and I was just like, I didn't want to do that. And I had found a good job at the time working for the YMCA, who also was incredible with my transition as well. They made sure that they called me by the right pronouns. They had my name changed. It was, yeah. So I
Excellent.
was doing that. And so yeah, so I decided, I just looked up and was just like, hey, you know, I'm starting my life now. And I did, and I haven't looked back, and I have been happy. I have not felt that whole, like you're just not a whole person. I didn't feel that anymore, and I feel 100% me, and I feel blessed for
Yeah.
that.
And this is a podcast, so people can't see us, but the smile on your face as you're describing this is incredible. And I know that feeling. When you make that decision, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna be myself. Yeah, it's a smile that comes from somewhere way deep inside.
Yeah, and it was funny too because when I actually started my transition, my endocrinologist at the time was actually very surprised. She was like, "It was. I feel like your body kind of already knew and was trying to make its own changes because I was producing way more testosterone naturally
Wow.
than what I was supposed to." Yeah. So I was already like having getting to the point where I had very thick facial hair, voice was deepening, and that was before I took my first T shot.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
All right, I am just going to say this for the record that I am so jealous of trans men, and you in particular. Is that, yeah, the facial hair is gorgeous, the voice is perfect, and you guys get that from T.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't work in the other direction. We trans women, the nothing happens to the voice, and nothing happens to the facial hair. So tell me about tea. What does it feel like? Uh,
Wonderful. No. But no. My first shot of testosterone, it was very unnoticeable at first. It's just like, you're taking a shot and you're just going, doing your regular everyday things. You don't think really anything is changing until you look up about, a week, two to a month or two. And next thing you know, it, like, everybody's like, you look different. And you start looking at your pictures and you start like listening to your voice when you make recordings,
yeah,
and you're just like, oh wow, like I have changed so much and never really realized it.
yeah.
But it feels good. The craziest thing I think for me being on testosterone was the mood swings. Yeah, your mind completely it changes a little when you get on testosterone.
Yeah, tell me
It's
about that.
you go
I've
from
heard
like
about it.
being a very emotional person to like you're not very emotional at all. Or at least that's how it was for me. I was because I can always notice like if I haven't taken my shot, like there's a reason why I haven't taken my shot, and it's been like a little minute. I'll get to where I'm very like I feel very emotionally attached to everything. But when I'm on my testosterone, I don't feel that attachment like that.
Hmm.
So I don't I'm not as so drawn into the emotional things that are going on around me,
Interesting.
which helps me manage a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the cool thing for me was I was able to handle my aggression because you do have that spike of aggression
Okay.
when you get on testosterone, which most people don't talk about.
Right.
But yeah, and it happens within the mood swings. But there's that kind of you're just a little bit more like testy. Like it doesn't take much for people to make you upset,
Yeah.
and it stems from the testosterone.
Wow.
But I'm such a happy person in general, and my aunt Mary can tell you that too as
Yes.
well. I'm such a happy person in general that I did not have like the hardcore side effects as far as having the aggression. I was very much so extremely calm.
That's good.
But the emotional part was very interesting for me because I was just like, oh, I could tell when I haven't been on my tea for a while because I get very like just emotional, very like I'll cry for no reason.
Now, I transitioned later in life, so I didn't do injections. They originally had me on pills for, I'm going to say, first 5 years, and now they've switched over to a patch. But injections, I didn't have to deal with. Is that a pain? Do you do that? Actually, do you do
Um,
that yourself, or do you have to go into the office? Or
I do my own shot. I
hmm
do it myself. I started off injecting into my thigh, and that was hard. I had a hard time with that.
yeah,
And I would get at first I was wonderful with it. Because I'm not afraid of needles. I'm not afraid of a little pain. Like I said, I've played football growing
sure,
up. I played basketball growing up. I played softball growing up. So very always physical sports. So I'm not afraid of pain or anything like that, needles. But that thigh, each week I started realizing that I was developing anxiety around my shot.
oh wow, okay,
So I got to the point that it went from me taking my shot taking only 3 minutes to like taking an hour just to take my shot. And I would
oh.
just be in there like, okay, I'm gonna do it. No, I'm not. I'm gonna do it. Just
Wow. And sort of did you end up, now this is just I think the way I would approach it, if you create an event, like light a candle and sit and psych
yes,
yourself up for it, is that
it's a routine.
okay, yeah, that's
Yes, that's exactly how it was. Like I would get everything set up, and I just had a moment
the
where I was like,
right
in this
music.
moment,
Yep.
this is when I'm gonna do
This is
this.
it. Yep.
So, and I'm to be honest, I'm still like that, but I got a new endocrinologist out here in Houston because that's where I moved to.
Okay.
So she's wonderful. She helped change my shot from a thigh shot to a stomach shot and a smaller needle.
Okay.
And it is way easier for me to take my shot. It literally only takes me a second.
Wow. Well, smaller needle sounds good to me, but stomach as opposed to thigh,
Yes.
I'm surprised.
Well,
Stomach.
it's easier because, I'm a fluffy guy. Uh, and so unfortunately when you're sticking into the thigh, you're more into the muscle.
Oh, okay.
So it's harder. Yeah, and then the stomach is softer and with that smaller needle that I don't feel my shot at all.
Oh, okay.
Like
That makes
I don't
sense.
feel it, yeah, at all. And that's what made it easier for me.
Oh, excellent. So you start in on the tee. You're starting to see physical changes. You've met the woman who is now your spouse, and your parents are working towards an understanding. Dad more so than mom at first. Were there any problems coming out in terms of your rollout of that information? Were there in terms of other family or workplace? You said the workplace was really cool about it, but were there any problems?
I would say there were a few people that I wouldn't necessarily call my friends because we didn't really like hang out as far as outside of the job. But hearing those conversations or comments, because if you didn't know, I pass. Uh,
Yes. Oh, yes. Very, very much, my friend. Once again, I'm
my
slipping into jealous mode here.
A lot of my coworkers, like even now, the coworkers that I have, and some of the friends that I have right now too, as well, have no idea that I'm trans. Have no clue. Because I'm not the type of person that really discloses that information unless asked. That's
Sure.
just kind of how, yeah,
Right.
where I'm. So yeah, so it was a lot of conversations that would come up, while I was at work. Like if something in the news happened, that dealt with a trans person, especially when it came to trans women as well.
Yeah.
Because they have those this that lovely trans lady that won the swimming race not too long ago.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes.
Yeah, like when those situations and things like that would happen, and I would hear some comments from people that I thought were cool, you know what I'm saying, and just hear like just the ignorance, yeah, and
When
so it,
you
it gets.
when you feel that, when you find yourself in that situation where you're surrounded by ignorance, you've got to balance your desire to, not breach your privacy, but there's that urge to, could I say something and educate in this moment?
Yes,
How do
definitely.
you
And that's exactly what I do. Yes, I am not the type of person that if I hear something like that, that will just let it slide.
good?
I definitely take that as an opportunity to educate somebody. So, and I've had a lot of people that I've had to set straight, and now they're just like, oh, wow, like, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't understand like what I was saying or what I was doing was that hurtful,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I any moment like that, if anyone's has their self in that type of situation, definitely say something,
Yeah.
and you don't have to compromise, your stealthiness. Like I never had to compromise who I was, but I definitely spoke on what I believed.
I just put up an interview with a cartoonist and an author, and she was referring to it as passing privilege. That if you are able to pass, to live stealth, there's a certain amount of privilege there. And
Yes.
and that's, well, I'm just going to be candid, that's not something I have. The way people make that decision is first they look at the face, then they look at the chest, and if they're really aware, then they look at the hands. But when people look at your face, it's very clear. You've got this dark beard and mustache. It's very clear who you are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what does that feel like to be able to pass and not have people clocking you?
Um, it's nice. Like it feels very nice. It to be honest, it was one of the things I think also too that helped my mother relax.
Mm.
Uh, because I will never forget. It was a birthday party of mine, and this was the first birthday that I was transitioning. So, or I was actually Lucas,
Yeah.
so it was my first birthday, and so I always go to Old Charlie's because it just holds a very special meaning to me for my birthday, and I was there eating, and the waitress comes by, and I'm with my now wife. And that was actually the first birthday she spent with me. And, and I'm with her, and we're in the restaurant, and we're eating, and so we get to the part where you pay, and so my mom was just like, I got both of my daughters, and she's just
Ooh.
saying who else she's got, and the waitress is looking, and she's just like, so who has his order? Like this guy right here, who's got his order? Like no one said anything. And then my mom's just like, "That's my daughter. That's my daughter." And so, yes, it was. And the waitress, the poor girl, she just looked like, "What are you talking about? I'm looking at a man right
Clearly
now.
not
I
a
don't
woman.
know,
Yeah.
right? I don't know who you're talking about." Right? Exactly. So, and
Oh,
so yeah, and so finally, my wife speaks up, and she's just like, she's talking about him. And I think that was my mother's first realization that you're holding on to something, and people don't see it. Because people don't, like that isn't something that you need to be concerned about.
yeah.
As far because my mom, when we did have a conversation, her biggest concern with me being trans was she was afraid I was going to get hurt. She was
Sure.
afraid somebody was going to do something to me. It's like she would tell me all the time, it's such a scary lifestyle, and she didn't know how to protect me, and those are her concerns as a parent.
Right.
And dealing with me being trans, and I totally understand that and get that. But then at the same time, I had to ease her mind in the fact that, mom, like, I pass.
Yeah.
I all the concerns that you really have, I don't. Uh,
Yeah.
like, as far as I had a wife I had a partner at the time, who loved me unconditionally. Like I said, who's now my wife. So as far as her concern about me being alone and not having anybody, like all those worries, I check those boxes, and
Yeah.
I think too that's what really like calmed her down. Like, okay, like he is fine. He's fine.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. A combination of you being able to put that into words, you know, Mom, I'm fine, and here's why I'm fine. That reassures her. And then it gives her the chance to step back and watch and say, yeah, what he's saying is true. So she can see that's the fears are not completely unfounded, but that you've got a handle on it.
yes.
So Lucas, where do you work? What is it you do?
I work with. They are a ABA clinic for kids with autism. I'm an RBT, a registered behavior technician. So I work with kids with autism, and I correct behaviors. Yeah, I spend a lot of time repeating a lot of things.
Right, right. And that's just, I mean, patience is the word that comes to mind.
Oh, definitely. I believe though working there, it's grown. I feel like I initially had pretty good patience, but then when I started working there, it's gotten even better. Because you deal with the kids' emotions. Because it's hard not being able to communicate and not knowing how to communicate. And
Sure.
so, and then when you finally get that person to figure it out and then kind of teach you, and you get the rewards of that, the benefits of seeing parents smile when their kids say "I love you" for the first time, things
Mhm.
like that. So it's very, very rewarding if you can, stay cool with the patience part. It's extremely rewarding.
Well, I admire you for that. In your job, have you? I guess the phrase I'm trying to get at here is male privilege. Have you experienced people responding differently to you in the workplace now that you not only present as masculine, but you pass so readily?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It was a complete change from being in the field as a female and now being in the field as a male. You just get taken serious. Like, people listen to you. It's we were talking about, like, being talked over and things like that. Yeah, like, I don't get that. Like, I'm the one that gets to like say something, and everyone else just stops and just kind of like, okay, yeah, we're gonna do that. Like,
And
so
that's one of the benefits of being trans is that you can see certain cultural things from both sides, that whereas a lot of cisgender guys do that but they don't understand that they're doing it, or they don't even understand that that's a thing. And women in the workplace almost universally have had that experience of being talked over or having somebody else repeat
yeah.
the exact same thing.
Same thing, yes. Because that's actually happened several times. I've been rewarded with something that one of my coworkers has said, and I just said it, and then they actually heard it because I said it. Like, and she was just like, "I just said that," and then I always have to be like, "It was Sarah's idea, guys."
There you
Like,
go. Right.
so yeah.
Bring that awareness to the table. So you've seen some benefits. You've seen an increase in privilege because let's face it, male privilege is,
Male privilege, yeah.
yeah,
And I
it's
think it's a lot more noticeable too now, because I did have that experience of being in the work field as a female before having the experience as a male. So knowing how you feel as a female and people just not listening to you, cutting you off, yeah, like, it gets frustrating. I can totally understand that. But then, like, being in it as a male and being actually finally heard, it's like it's almost like a relief, but then you feel bad.
right, right.
Yeah.
Do the kids react differently?
Definitely, which is very interesting, but I don't know if that's just due to just presenting as masculine or the masculine voice.
Mm,
Because I know a lot of my kids will purposely tune out a lot of the female coworkers that I have. But as soon as I say something, they immediately turn around.
Yeah.
But I think it's more or less just hearing the voice rather than what they see.
Well, as a former teacher, yeah, I know the voice. So
Yes.
you've seen benefits. Are there any drawbacks?
Yeah, no. If anything, I feel like I've been very lucky to experience both worlds.
Yeah, sure, sure.
So,
Well, well, one of the
so,
things, and this is coming from a white woman, so forgive me if I misspeak, but my understanding is that pretty much all young black men have a conversation at some point about what you do and don't do in certain public spaces
definitely.
to keep yourself safe. As you're
That
experiencing more male privilege, does being a black male have its drawbacks?
definitely, definitely. You start to notice things a lot more. Like, for me, like, people responding to me. Like, at first, I'm able to walk around as a female. I don't feel like I'm being noticed as much. As a black female, definitely not noticed as much. But as a black male, I see the expressions or on people's faces, especially if it's dark. I'm walking into Walmart and it may be a white female in front of me and I'm walking behind her and I can see her clutch her purse. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
threatening in any type of way.
Right. Right.
I'm probably the biggest teddy bear. And it's just like, it's just that initial reaction. Like, you just see that change in people, and how they respond to you, especially if they don't know you, being a black male. So I got that. Uh, Getting pulled over, as far as
Mm.
with police officers, it's a lot different experience. um as a female, I was able to sit, and they come to the window and they give you a ticket or whatever it is that you're going to deal with. And then it's like, I had this time before I actually moved out here to Houston where I am, we won't say if I was or wasn't speeding, but
I'm certainly not, but, and I think the statute of limitations has passed on that. So even if you
right, exactly.
were, yeah, never.
So yeah, I just, I don't know really what happened, but I get pulled over and just to see the cop get out the car and initially realizing that I'm a black male, reach for his hip, before even
Mm.
asking me like for my ID. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I've never been in trouble, like that. And it was definitely a different experience, very scary, very scary. It puts you in a place that you realize that you do have to be more calm. I remember hearing him in his voice when I would speak to him, and I would be speaking to him as like I'm speaking to you right now, and he was automatically like, "You have an attitude, like you're. I
Really?
can tell you're upset, And I'm just like, no, I'm literally just trying to follow directions,
Right.
like, you know and it was very shocking. It was very traumatizing experience, to be done like that. But it's something that you have to be aware of being a black male, you know
Did anybody in the line of your transition, you relied on friends and you had health professionals who were guiding you along. Did anybody have that conversation with you?
in my home. And with my family, I feel like it's a regular conversation.
Mm.
It's something I've kind of always been aware of, but just never had experienced until transition. So
Right.
it's like, yeah, so it's like you hear these things, you see these clips, on social media and TV, and it's just like you see all this, but it's different when it happens to you. And it's different when you have to, like, it's something that you have to be aware of now,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's terrifying, and it really does affect you because um I got pulled over recently, not for anything bad or anything like that. So it wasn't speeding. I was actually doing the right thing. It was just one of those like routine stop check,
Okay. All right.
situations. And
I believe you, Lucas, but
yeah. So but he asked me, he says, I can visually tell that, you're nervous, and I was just like, just the other experiences that I've had being a black male and being pulled over by the police.
have scarred me. And I realized that with that last pullover, even though I was doing absolutely nothing, it was not nobody was in trouble. There was nothing, like I said, just a routine check. They're just I was in an area where something had happened and they were just trying to make sure everybody was safe. And it was just like I'm responding in a traumatized way just from that experience.
Yeah.
So but yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. And it, like you say, it informs the next time and
Definitely.
and puts you on
And
the
being
back
also
foot.
to a trans male, and even though like physically when they see you as male, if you, let's say you haven't had your ID done, and then them figuring out that you are a trans male, it also puts you in another bracket of danger that most people don't realize too as well.
Right.
So yeah, so that's also been another like thing I had to deal with until getting my ID changed. Yeah, so you almost have to fight for your identity. Like,
Yeah, right. We were put together for this conversation by your Aunt Mary, and your aunt is really something special. So I thought,
Oh yes.
yeah, I thought maybe we should end this conversation by just talking a little bit about that and embarrassing the hell out of her. Um, so I don't know if you want to start or you want me to, but
Oh, I definitely can start.
jump in,
But
jump
my Aunt
in.
Mary already knows this because I love her so much.
Mm.
First things first, though, I really, really want her to hear this, and because I don't think she gets to hear it enough. But like her and my uncle Ken were really the ones who helped me and my sister as far as travel and to get to see a lot of things that we probably would have never ever gotten to see if it really weren't for them. And I just want her to know how appreciative we are of that, especially now in our older years. And I was like, I know we haven't been able to really tell her that, but I really want her to feel that. Also, too, it was so heartwarming to her already automatically having open arms to me when I first came out,
Unquestioning,
and
right? Not even
oh yeah,
not even a hiccup, not a hesitation.
not oh yeah, no, it was nothing but love,
Yeah.
absolutely nothing but love. And so and I don't know if she knows like how much that means to me. Like I'm doing better now, but I literally have had days where I have cried about this.
Mm. Yeah.
I've cried about this with my wife, just like, I love my Mary so much. And she just doesn't know how much I love her.
Well, see, this is the value of this episode is we get to put that on the record how much we both love her.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know that she will cry when she hears you say that. I guarantee it.
But yes,
Lucas. Yeah.
and I was like, and she doesn't know too. There's two specific moments in my life that I can remember that were extremely important to me, and she probably has no idea because they were so small. But the very first time that she ever gave me a pair of hand-me-down black blue jeans that she gave me from my cousin Kirby. And I love those blue jeans so much. I have a picture of me in them when I was like 10 years old. And I was so happy, so proud. And I had my Titans jersey on with them. And I love those blue jeans so much because they made me feel like who I felt I was.
Yeah.
And I was like, she probably has no idea like that I felt that way when I got those blue jeans from her. And so I was like, I definitely want her to hear that and know that. But she was probably one of the first people that really honestly made me feel okay, as far as being who I am. And the second time was I was in college and I needed to wash my clothes.
Okay.
I was at Fisk University and they were living in Nashville at this time. And I never forget going over to the house and dropping my clothes off and being like, hey, I'm going to be right back. I'm going to wash my clothes and, and everything, but I got to go do something really quick. I left and came back. She had washed all of my clothes.
Of course she had. Yeah.
She had washed all of my clothes. And so I'm getting the bags and putting the bags in the car. And I remember her saying, she was just like, you have such cool clothes. Like your clothes are so cool. And that made me feel so good because like at the time, I had came out as a lesbian to my mom and, she wasn't very happy as far as like how I dressed and things like that. So I always felt self-conscious about having masculine clothes. And my Aunt Mary was just like, no, these are cool.
This
like,
is super
you look
cool.
good.
Yeah.
Like she has always encouraged me just to be myself. And that means so much to me. And I just want her to know I love her so much for that. Yeah, like she's probably one of the pillars that I've held on to besides my cousin Zena, because I definitely want her to feel that love too. Because Zena actually stood in as a second mom to me when everything was happening when I first came out as trans. But my Aunt Mary, though, since I've been a child, she has always been just proud of me for just who I am. Yeah. And I love her for that.
It's that simple to make us feel good. It didn't take any
pair of blue jeans.
A pair of blue jeans.
My clothes and saying they're
cool.
Cool.
That's it. I have a similar experience with my friend Karen. Early on in my journey and questioning, she gave me this black sweater dress that, oh, Lucas, I rocked. I looked so good in this. And that was it. That was all I needed to know bone deep that Karen had my back.
So it's so nice just to know that you have family there. Like when I thought my world was falling apart, my Aunt Mary was there and I had family. I had somebody that I knew I could go to and that was going to have her arms wide open and ready to just love all over me, because that's what she does.
Oh, yes. Yes, she does. So I've known your Aunt Mary since college, since she was at UTK. Go Vols.
Yes.
And more than anybody I know, she is able to take grief and loss and suffering, and she has had her share of this.
Yes.
And just, she turns it into love for other people, and I admire her for that. She has that ability to do that, to transform the dark stuff. And I think that's something that the three of us have all experienced. You were describing a very dark place where you were. I've been in that spot. Mary has too. And she turns that into love.
Yes.
And Mary, we love you.
Yes, we do. We love you so much. And my uncle can too. I don't want him to feel left out.
I'll be doing more of this storytelling in the future. I'm presenting at the Trans Community of New England's First Event Conference in Boston this January. First Event is one of the longest running conferences for trans and gender non-conforming folks in the nation. I'll be offering the services of Transqat, the podcast, to attendees to tell a little bit of their story. And then I'll compile the results into, most likely, 2 episodes, which will drop in February. So stay tuned for that. This is Transqat. I'm Claire McCarthy. Thanks for listening. Let's talk soon. One last thing. I'm uploading this podcast on Tuesday, November 29th, 10 days after the shooting at Club Q in Colorado Springs. And I'd like to leave you with just 2 thoughts. First, Army veteran Richard Fierro, who intervened and disabled the shooter, was quoted in the New York Times as saying, "That's what I fought for, so they can do whatever the hell they want." Thank you, Mr. Fierro, for standing up and taking the risk. Secondly, in lieu of platitudes or expressions of my anger and sadness, I'd like to simply list the names of the 5 fatalities that night. Daniel Aston and Derek Rump were bartenders at the club, and patrons Raymond Green Vance, Kelly Loving, and Ashley Paw. Requiescant in pace.
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece. Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC. Copyright 2022, all rights reserved. Join us on the web at transqat.com. That's TRANSQAT.com. There, you'll find links to Transqat, the blog, writing projects, speaking engagements, and more. You can also meet the team who thought spelling cat with a Q was a good idea. Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Leave us a comment on whatever platform you use to stream this podcast. Just remember to be kind. She has enough self-esteem problems already. To reach Claire with a question or a suggestion for an upcoming episode, just use the contact page at the website or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com. Thanks for listening!